Hello and welcome to the Wards Editorial Roundtable. I'm Tom Murphy, and we are going to talk today about the 2019 Wards 10 Best Engines winners. We had 34 powertrains that we evaluated this year, and for those of you who don't know the rules, we evaluate every all-new engine and electric propulsion system available in the U.S. market priced under $64,000. So we don't evaluate engines that have been on the market for a number of years. We're only looking at the newest stuff. So in this year's field of 34 powertrains, we had 4 V8 engines, we had 8 6-cylinder engines, we had 17 4-cylinder engines, we had 15 turbocharged engines in all. And this year's winners, as I will read for you the list, we had the BMW X5, 3-liter B58 turbocharged inline-6, the Chevrolet Silverado 6.2-liter V8 with DFM, the FCA Ram 1500 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 e-torque. We had the Ford 5-liter V8 engine in the Mustang GT and also the Mustang Bullitt, the Ford F-150 3-liter Power-Stroke diesel V6, the Honda Accord Hybrid with the 2-liter Atkinson cycled 4-cylinder engine. We had the Hyundai Kona electric vehicle, the Hyundai Nexo fuel cell vehicle, the Infiniti QX50 2-liter turbo VC turbo 4-cylinder engine. We also had the Lexus UX 250h hybrid 2-liter engine. So that's our list, and we're going to talk about it here among the editors, and I'm going to introduce our panelists today. To my left, Drew Winter, Steve Finlay, James Amond, and Bob Gritzinger. So let's talk about the winners. We're going in alphabetical order. For those of you who don't know, number 1 is the same as number 10. We don't have a number 10 or a number 1 engine, so we're going to go in alphabetical order by brand. So let's talk first about the BMW X5. This 3-liter inline-6 is the new generation, the B58, which kind of replaced the N55 engine that we enjoyed, that we recognized on a number of lists over the years. BMW makes tremendous inline-6 turbocharged engines. Who wants to start this love fest for BMW?
Well, you know, we've tested so many engines over the years, and there's just nothing beats the inline-6. I mean, it is the perfect engine, you know, in terms of balance and VH and everything else, and it just, wow, and it just gets better and better.
And keep in mind, the X5 is an all-new vehicle, so this engine, you know, the B58 inline-6 turbo made our list in 2016 when it was completely new, made the list again in 2017, and now it's been updated as they launched the all-new X5, a really important vehicle, very high-volume vehicle, big 2-row or 3-row vehicle, and this engine just moves that vehicle effortlessly, I thought. And also getting 21, 22 miles per gallon, very impressive.
Just feels like the perfect fit for this size vehicle. So smooth, strong, and really unnoticeable stop-start system. Yep. So that's helping the fuel economy as well.
Well, aside from the power, there's also just the sophistication of the engine and its performance. It's like the precision of a Swiss clock, and you know they just keep making it better and better.
Yeah, the power comes on just so smoothly, and it's one of those vehicles, you know, that when you're driving it, that power's coming on so smoothly. You look down, and you're doing 90 miles an hour, and you have no clue that you're going that fast.
And turbine-like smoothness, I mean, I think a lot of us commented, and I think it was interesting that a few years ago there was some talk that the inline engine was just going to go away because it was too tall, and there were all these pedestrian protection regulations and all that stuff. And now we're seeing not only the BMW inlines being very strong, but also now Mercedes has come out with some, and so you know, it's a very significant, just a great engine.
Yeah. So let's move on to the Chevy Silverado in alphabetical order. This is the 6.2-liter DFM. That's the dynamic fuel management system. It's a very sophisticated cylinder deactivation system that has 17 different operating modes. So, you know, it can shut down, it can choose which cylinders in sequence and in which sequence to change, and it's just remarkable how it works so seamlessly. And it can go from 8 cylinders down to 2 cylinders, and it's very difficult to even tell when it is switching. You can be on the highway at steady state speed, in this massive truck running on 2 cylinders. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, silky smooth V8. We really liked it. It's interesting. It has this really sophisticated controller on it that's monitoring the accelerator pedal, determining how much torque, so how many cylinders it should run on. Depending on how much foot the driver is putting into it, and it's reading that 80 times a second. So it's just it's crazy sophisticated technology, and it's the 6.2 liter V8, right? So it shares a displacement, some output numbers with the previous generation 6.2 liter, but with all the work that went into the dynamic fuel management, this is basically an all-new engine,
Right.
and we're talking 1 mile per gallon improvement in fuel efficiency in the city cycle. 2 miles per gallon if you look at real-world conditions, and those numbers, nothing to sneeze at, because that's upwards of a 13% improvement in efficiency.
Yeah, those MPG numbers may seem small, but when they're factored against what trucks perform at, a 1 and 2 mile per gallon gains are significant.
Yeah, 420 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque. I mean, that's
Yeah.
and also very high compression, 11.5. I mean, for a big V8 like that, that's pretty impressive. Drew, there's still life for the pushrod engine, right?
Yeah, we're still seeing, we've got this old configuration with what they call overhead valves or pushrod engines, and actually it all works better with this system they have in there, and it's. And here, we're seeing all these electrical solutions for improving fuel economy. This was a very sophisticated and very clever mechanical one, which I think, while we all are recognizing here, it was really neat.
Yeah. So let's move on to another truck. We had 3 trucks that made the list this year. This is the first time that 3 pickup trucks have made the 10 best engines list, and it reflects what's happening in the marketplace. Automakers are spending their money on great powertrains for trucks that are selling at very high volume. So our next winner is the Ram 1500, 3.6 liter Pentastar V6 with this e-torque 48 volt mild hybrid stop-start system. And the 3.6 liter Pentastar has made our list a number of times. This is an updated version of the engine as it appears now with this 48 volt system. And it's interesting to see that FCA, instead of doing a total clean sheet engine, they worked on this 48 volt system that they could not only tack on to the V6, but they could also work it with the Hemi V8. They could work it with the Wrangler, in the 2 liter turbo 4-cylinder. But the Pentastar to us was just really compelling because we were getting about 22 miles per gallon and just delivering everything that you want. Amazing stop-start ability. You could stand at a stoplight with your foot on the brake if you wanted for 10 minutes, and the engine would not turn back on because that 48-volt system is so robust.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times we've seen the demonstration by the engineer who worked on this, showing his little glass of water and indicating that, it's kind of like several ounces, 1.7 ounces of fuel every 90 seconds that this engine is saving during that time when the engine is idle. So, and when I say idle, I mean completely stopped. I think the really grand thing about this powertrain and what really appealed to us is the seamlessness of how this operates. You're not aware that there's anything different going on under the hood. It's just a V6 operating. And it adds a certain amount of torque to blend with the engine. You don't gain extra power. You just gain seamlessness, smooth operation, and it's just from launch to speed limit, it's just perfect.
Well, launch is typically in a gasoline engine where you use the most power, right? It drains the gasoline. But if you launch it with the help of electrical propulsion, there's a big part of the battle. So we're talking about a full-size pickup truck that we're getting 22 miles per gallon. And it's a four-wheel drive, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that just is amazing.
Well, and I think there's so much talk now about when you talk about electrification, everybody thinks of electric cars. And here we're just talking about, electrified components, and they make a huge difference, and certainly we're going to see a lot of evolution here. And I think it's really interesting how, just looking at one part of an engine electrifying one part can make such a big difference.
Yeah, that's a real important point, that it's got mild hybrid applications. It's not a hybrid,
Yeah.
but there is borrowing from that whole
Yeah.
idea.
And to your point on that, it's great to see this 48-volt technology out there
Yeah.
because the industry is going electric, and if we can build more batteries, get more scale with this technology, we can bring down the cost of the bigger batteries as well.
And yeah, we've talked to Bob. We've talked to Bob Lee over the years at Fiat Chrysler about the importance of using what you have, and that's exactly what they did in the case of the Pentastar. It's still a port injection engine. The rest of the industry has gone in many cases to direct injection, and they're still doing great with port injection engine, achieving 20 and 25 miles per gallon with this vehicle, and also the base price on this $35,695 for a full-size pickup truck that is very capable. We're just very impressed with that.
We also did some off-roading in it. It
We did
performed
some
well
off-road.
there.
Yeah, it did. It was a lot of fun. It was, and it was very, very controlled and quiet and smooth. Yeah. So let's move on to the 5-liter V8 in the Mustang. This is the first time, I think, in a while that we've had 2 V8s make the list in 1 year. There was not long ago where we didn't have a single V8 on the list, but now this year, in addition to the GM V8, we have the V8 and also the Ford V8. Which, by the way, is the only return winner. So all of the other 9 engines and powertrains on the list this year are all new. So let's talk about this V8. We tested it in the GT at 460 horsepower. We tested it in the Bullet at 480 horsepower. So Bob, tell us about it.
I'm just so pleased that we brought this back to the list, but I think that a big piece of that was this Bullet powertrain and that calibration. 20 horsepower doesn't sound like a lot, but when you change the entire torque curve and power delivery from a V8 like this, all of a sudden this thing's just a blast. And I think the topper is eschewing the 10-speed automatic in the regular GT that we tested and going straight to that 6-speed manual standard equipment in the Bullet, and it's just a blast. It rev matches perfectly. It sounds wonderful from the moment you push that ignition button to that sad moment when you have to turn it off. It's just over the top, a blast.
Yeah, it's got that delicious exhaust note to it and making huge torque. And I like that matchup with the 10-speed auto too. That was a real smooth runner. And all those driving modes that you can use on this thing. This thing is just so much fun to drive.
There's track mode, there's a snow wet mode as well. Yeah.
It's such a high-tech package.
Yeah.
Just really impressive, and it carries that legacy forward of the 5-liter very nicely.
And in this case, for the Bullet application, you've got this completely redone intake manifold that is borrowed from the GT350.
Right,
with,
correct.
Larger runners, more air.
Larger throttle body.
Yeah,
Yep.
so.
And then this freer flowing exhaust that they add, which is active, and you can adjust from quiet startup so you don't rattle your neighbor's windows in the morning to just full out race mode where the instrument cluster says you're in race mode. Are you sure?
Quiet mode isn't terribly quiet though.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind waking up my neighbors at all. Not at all.
So I had a note here on James Amon's score sheet. He wrote 19 mpg with my foot on its throat all day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's great. That's
Right.
fantastic.
That's a good
Just
number.
running
That's a
around
good
town,
number.
having a blast.
Also, this engine is built at the Essex Engine Plant in Windsor. Very, a local homegrown engine for us. Also, we're going to move on to the next Ford engine, the Ford F-150 3-liter Power Stroke diesel V6. Interesting engine. Has its origins back in 2005 in Australia, Ford Australia. Engine most recently had been used primarily by Jag Land Rover, but now Ford kind of takes it back, does some modifications to it to prep it for the F-150. And we've all at this table been clamoring for light-duty diesels in full-size pickup trucks for many years because it makes so much sense. Even if there's a little more burble than in a gas engine, it seems so fitting in a full-size pickup truck. Great for towing. The horsepower is not what you're going to get in a diesel. In this case, it's only 250 horsepower, but that 440 pound-feet of torque from a 3-liter engine is astounding.
That's pretty massive.
And then even more astounding, the 4x2 fuel economy rating of 30 miles per gallon on the highway. And during our testing, we drove this vehicle about 800 miles, and we were all pushing 25, 26 miles per gallon in a full-size pickup truck. So that's
and nobody
pretty
was
compelling.
complaining about the noisy diesel this time.
No.
Yeah, to your point, it's a very quiet diesel. I mean, you gotta, as they say, you really have to have your ass calibrated to tell that it is a diesel.
Yep.
You mentioned the 440 pound-foot of torque on that, coming in at 1750, so
Yeah.
good and early.
Very low, very low. And you can tow 11,400 pounds. Payload is 2,020 pounds. Everything that you need to do with a full-size pickup truck, you can do it with this engine.
And fits perfectly with that 10-speed automatic.
Does.
Just that gets the most out of that lower RPM engine.
And the stop-start,
Yeah,
very
it's a perfect
imperceptible.
fit.
I mean, even with a diesel engine, the stop-start works really well.
And I've got to say, some of these new transmissions really are adding a new dimension to the engines we're testing now, because they can do so much more in terms of smoothing things out, improving performance, whatever you want.
And so this is kind of a shot across the bow, for the truck market here in Detroit. Of course, FCA Ram has had the EcoDiesel for a number of years, and there's going to be, we're going to see more of these EcoDiesels. We've got one coming from General Motors. Hopefully, we'll get to test that one next year for the 10 Best Engines competition.
And they're all going to be in trucks. I mean, what do you think is the history or the future of the diesel in a car?
In a car?
Like a duck in the water?
Well, there we need to look at companies like Volkswagen, well, not Volkswagen, but we need to look at BMW and Mercedes. Of course, Mazda has been promising a diesel engine for the last 8 years in the U.S. Still don't have it.
Diesel, right? And
GM,
Cruise,
yeah, yep.
And the Equinox.
Equinox.
Yeah.
But looking down the road at all the possibilities that electrification offers, I think you're going to find the diesel in the pickup segment where it does work.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next vehicle, the Honda Accord Hybrid. This is a 2-liter Atkinson cycle 4-cylinder, dual overhead cam with IV tech. We love that about Hondas. This is the 3rd generation of their 2-motor hybrid system. We've seen it in a number of vehicles from Honda. And in this case, the Accord is all new. Again, it's benefiting from a whole new platform for the vehicle and this great powertrain that really works well together. And here we are getting 40 miles per gallon in a very well-proportioned, high-volume sedan that prices at $25,100 with hybrid. And the city highway rating is 47 miles in the city, 47 miles per gallon on the highway. Combined 212 peak horsepower. I mean, hybrids have come such a long way, and we all enjoy driving this vehicle.
Yeah, I think like I said, they've come a long way. Honda certainly seems to have figured this system out. It's quiet, it's smooth, it feels like a luxury powertrain. In fact, very little sacrifice. You mentioned the price point, $30,000, and the EPA sticker knocking on 50 miles per gallon. That's outstanding.
This is such a refined, smooth vehicle. This powertrain is just a perfect fit for that person who wants that, near luxury sedan feel.
And I think that's our 3rd shout out to the transmission engineers out there.
You're right. You're right.
But I really think that the design brief on the Honda Accord Hybrid was make it drive like an electric car. Because that's definitely, to me, in terms of the power delivery, the sounds it makes, everything else, it's seen. during most of the drive cycle. It seemed very much just like a battery electric car. Very fast, great performance, great sounds. I mean, different from most of the hybrids we've tested this year or any other that are very efficient, but not quite so satisfying to drive.
Yeah. The all-new Accord also has that 3-microphone active noise canceling system. That's pretty
that helps
cool.
too. Yeah.
Would like to know what that vehicle would sound like in hybrid dress without that.
Good point.
If it's, it might be doing its job. Exactly what you want. But there was never a time where I felt like, it was making some noises that were untoward. So. Let's move on to Hyundai. Hyundai, for the first time, wins 2 Wards 10 Best Engines trophies. This time, the first one that we're going to talk about is the Hyundai Kona electric vehicle. And this one made our list because its driving range is 258 miles. That's longer than the Chevy Bolt. Compared to the Tesla Model 3, there are 2 versions of that. One makes a range of 220 miles. One has 310. But still, 258 miles for the Kona, very impressive, and we're all enjoying electric vehicles these days. Great torque, a lot of fun to drive, and Bob, I think you were saying that you kept on chirping the tires in the Kona EV?
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at my notes here, and I'm saying, screaming quick, then you punch up sport mode.
Yeah, right.
So, and all of that with very judicious use of the electricity, getting the maximum range out of the vehicle. Miles to range was, spot on.
Wow. Yeah, I was shocked. That was probably the biggest deal when I drove it home the first night. I drove 23 miles, and I only burned off like 14 miles of range. And I was driving, 80, 85 miles an hour on the expressway. I hadn't experienced that before. That was impressive.
And then you push sport.
Yeah, right.
No.
Right, yeah.
Well, to that point, and maybe stating the obvious to us and probably most viewers, is that the quickness of an EV in like this size vehicle, it's just that instant torque. And I think what's holding back EV sales to a certain extent with the general public is this misperception that they're pokey vehicles, because they're not gasoline powered, they're slow, and this is just the opposite.
Right. Comes out of years of hybrids that are really designed for maximum fuel efficiency and really low power from an internal combustion engine combined with a little bit of electric. Yep. You go to a straight electric and.
Well, in this case, you can, the max speed of the Kona EV is 104 miles per hour. That's, you got 170 kilowatts of power there. And then in terms of charging, there's fast charging capability of 54 minutes with this vehicle. That's pretty solid. SAE combo fast charging stations, there are 1,380 of those in the U.S. right now, so hopefully we'll see more of those. You can charge with a level 2 as well. It's going to take longer, of course. But yeah, really impressed with the Kona EV.
And they really nail the package on this too. It's a crossover. That's what everybody wants.
Yep.
Right.
And I think maybe we can see a little movement if automakers can catch on and start electrifying more of their crossovers.
So yeah, to your point, Steve, feeling like electrics, where people think that they're just pokey. Well, maybe because most of the electrics have been cars, maybe that's been the barrier to people signing on the dotted line. If you offer them a utility vehicle, which they're buying already, maybe they would think about that a little bit more seriously. And also, if we see some instability in terms of fuel prices, maybe the environment is right for getting an electric.
Plus, according to some studies, the salesperson at the dealership talks them out of buying the EV, which NADA totally denies, but I've heard cases of that happening.
Why do they do that?
Why? Yeah.
Because the dealers aren't making as much money. The commissions.
Department on the back end.
And the other is they're not familiar enough with the EV product, so they're comfortable selling the ICE.
Well, and I think maybe it was a story that we ran too. Also, these type of vehicles take longer to sell because they have to explain more. And the salespeople are thinking, geez, it's going to take me, 2 hours to explain this thing. I'd rather just put them in another car that they
Let me show you the cilantro.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to the Hyundai Nexo fuel cell vehicle. This is the third hydrogen-fueled vehicle to make the Ward's 10 Best Engines list. And of course, the first one to make the list was the Hyundai Tucson some years ago, followed last year by the Honda Clarity fuel cell vehicle. And in this case, each time that we've tested them, there's more range. The tanks are bigger, the packages are improved, and so in this case, 380 miles of range on a full tank. That's 3 individual tanks, right, Drew? Three individual tanks for a total of 41.4 gallons of hydrogen. You get that thing filled up, and you can drive for 380 miles. Which is better than, in the Tucson fuel cell, it was 265 miles. And then in the Clarity, it was 366 miles. So each time they keep on raising the bar a bit. Tell us about the Nexo.
Oh, well, no range anxiety with this one. So it's really, I've been saying this all along, but I never thought I'd live to see the day when we were testing hydrogen-powered fuel cell vehicles. But what's new about the Nexo is really that a number of things, besides the range and the great performance and the fact that it looks really good and it's a very attractive car to mainstream consumers. They also did a really great packaging job with the Nexo in terms of unlike all the other vehicles to go before it. Leg room and cargo room isn't sacrificed, and then from sort of an industrial manufacturing standpoint, all these very expensive tank components now are commonized with Hyundai's commercial operations. So it shares these expensive tanks and valves with the commercial fuel cell buses and trucks that Hyundai also is building. So you get more economies of scale, and there's a very strong now progress in making hydrogen cars more affordable. And lastly, and not least of all, it's also the platform for Hyundai's autonomous electrified future. And what a lot of people don't know is that autonomous guidance systems use a huge amount of electricity, and with a fuel cell, they're able to refuel quickly, so they won't suffer the range issues that autonomous vehicles, electrified autonomous vehicles, will suffer from.
So you see a future for hydrogen.
It's a long-term future, but you got to start somewhere, and we got to celebrate these accomplishments.
Absolutely.
That Hyundai is.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are still intrigued by this idea that you can take the world's most abundant element, hydrogen, and power a car with it, and out of the exhaust system comes water vapor. I mean, that is nirvana when it comes to environmentally friendly.
Yeah. The issue is refueling for now, right?
Absolutely.
So, most of this activity with the Nexo will be happening in California, and in California, I think they have around 40 charging stations today, refueling stations, with plans for I think 19 more by 2020. So. The key is that that Hyundai wants to get these vehicles into the hands of people who are living within the range of those stations where they can fuel up easily. And I understand Hyundai and Audi also have expanded a licensing agreement working on fuel cells, which is great. The more partnerships, the better, it seems.
Sure, GM and Honda are working together, and there's and clearly the commercial side is probably going to drive it, because then you have centralized refueling stations, and you can do a lot with whether they're Class 8 trucks or buses or whatever.
Yep. All right, so we're running low on time, so we're going to talk now about the last two winners, and the Infiniti QX50 has an amazing variable compression engine that's in production right now. It's a 2-liter, they call it the VC Turbo. It's a 4-cylinder engine, and Bob Gritzinger knows quite a bit about it.
Oh, I got to drive this very early on with the powertrain engineer from Japan who worked on it for many years, kind of the father of VC Turbo, and I just loved watching him smile as I was just hammering on this vehicle around a test track. But when you consider what's going on inside this engine, that there's this multi-link that is actually changing the length of the stroke to change the compression ratio from 14:1 to 8:1, depending on demand. It's stunning what's going on at speed.
And you can't tell.
And
You don't notice that it's switched from 8 to 1 to 14 to 1.
I mean, I hate to bring in the other H-name company, but this is like VTEC at 1,600 RPM. You don't have to wind this up to
there.
past 5,000 to get that feel. It's instant right there. It's just terrific technology applied here in the QX50 as the first vehicle, but it's also rolling out in the Ultima,
Yep.
and I'm sure it'll.
And it's interesting to look at the numbers. 268 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're switching the compression while you're driving, that's where you really notice it. You want the low compression when you really need the power. The high compression is the efficiency, kind of steady state cruising, and yeah, when you reach that 8 to 1 compression ratio, you really feel it. It's almost like this electric or kind of this kick in the pants.
And their point with this is not to replace 4 cylinders, but to replace their V6.
Right.
They match this up against their 3.5 liter V6, and so same kind of power output with a 27% fuel economy gain.
Right.
So.
Well, and speaking of fuel economy, we logged 25 to 26 miles per gallon in this good size 2-row luxury CUV. I drove it out to Long Island over the Thanksgiving weekend, 1,800 miles, and 25 to 26 miles per gallon with 3 adults and a bunch of luggage in the back.
It's fast, too.
It's fast. It's a whole lot of fun to drive. The Lexus UX 250h, last but not least, this is a hybrid package that comes in this all-new compact CUV that Lexus is bringing to the market right now, and it's a fun package. It's an affordable package. Our sticker price on this vehicle was $36,890 for a vehicle that is rated at 41 on the city, 38 mpg on the highway. This comes from this all-new Dynamic Force engine family from Toyota, and this family gave us last year the 2.5 liter Camry hybrid that made our list. So now this is kind of the next generation. This is applied now to a smaller engine from the same family. Of course, it's 2 liters, and it's all part of this the global architecture platform. 40% thermal efficiency from this engine, which is outstanding. There's just not a lot of engines out there making 40% thermal efficiency. System horsepower of 181, and there are 3 motors in this. There are 2 motors in this. This is a front-wheel drive system. 2 motors baked into the transmission up front, and then a 3rd motor that's in the back in the differential, acting as all-wheel drive. If you buy this hybrid UX, you're getting all-wheel drive automatically. So just a whole lot of fun, very affordable, great package.
Great vehicle. Just another example of Toyota mastering the hybrid system. They were the first to come out with it 20 years ago or so, and there were skeptics saying, "What are you doing? 2 systems like that? That's a little overcomplicated." But this is the latest example of how they have mastered that technology, and they're just doing it everywhere. I mean, they're going to be coming out with the new hybrid Corolla. They're going to put 4-wheel drive on the Prius hybrid. They're just very dedicated to that powertrain, and it shows.
Well, and they're saying, they are billing this as the most fuel-efficient CUV, SUV in the United States without a plug. And that's saying something. Mm-hmm. And in our testing, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, we saw 38 miles per gallon in a good sized vehicle. And so, very impressed with it. And just as a final note, so Toyota, to your point, Steve, has more 10 Best Engines trophies for hybrids than any other automaker. They have 6. This is their 6th. So
not surprised.
Kudos. And 4 of those were for the different generations of the Prius. So,
and this one now is the perfect package for the Lux Greenie.
Right. And as we wrap up this conversation, we're going to close by announcing a little bit of news. As of this year going forward, this is the 25th year of the Ward's 10 Best Engines competition. We're going to be referring to it as the Ward's 10 Best Engines and Propulsion Systems, which, of course, if you've been following us since 2001, you've known that we've had the Prius and lots of other electrics and other hybrids on our list. So this is kind of a natural evolution of the competition. We really do want to recognize that it's not just internal combustion engines. It's the whole package. It's all electrified propulsion as well. So thanks for tuning in.